You think you know what men really want, but you are wrong. It is not sex. It never was. The true male desire is something almost no one talks about, and Carl Jung's psychology explains it brutally. In this video, you will discover why so many men feel empty even after pleasure. You will understand the hidden secret behind desire and how it may be controlling your life without you noticing. What you hear here can forever change the way you see intimacy and yourself. If topics like psychology, philosophy, and the darkness of the human soul interest you, subscribe to the channel now. Early on, society shapes the man as if he were a character in a play he never chose to participate in. He learns that he needs to conquer, prove himself, impress. There is no room for pause, introspection, or vulnerability. Masculinity becomes a heavy costume, sewn with external expectations and fear of rejection. Every gesture is rehearsed, every word measured to reinforce the image of strength. The boy who once cried for affection now wears the armor of a warrior who can never show weakness. And so, the theater begins. On the stage of intimate life, this character continues performing. He believes that his value lies in performance, in technique, in the ability to satisfy. He learns that the female body is a mechanical puzzle to be solved, and that his skill in solving this puzzle measures his masculinity. But this pursuit is illusory, because what he delivers is only a role, well rehearsed, yes, but empty. Performance replaces presence, and behind every movement there is a stifled fear. The fear of not being enough if he shows who he really is. Jung said that what we do not face in ourselves ends up manifesting in the world in a distorted way. In the case of the performing man, this distortion appears in sex turned into a stage, in touch turned into a spectacle. There is no silence, no surrender, no soul. The body is present, but consciousness is absent. And when the mind withdraws, the act loses its meaning and is reduced to a sequence of lifeless gestures, as if real connection were forbidden territory. What makes this performance even more cruel is that it often deceives the actor himself. He believes he is in control. He believes he knows what he is doing and that he is in command. But what truly guides him is not conscious desire. It is the shadow. It is the part of him that carries the pain of rejection, the absence of a father, the unspoken loneliness. It is this shadow that pushes him to seek approval through performance. Deep down, he does not only want physical pleasure. He wants to be seen. He wants to be chosen. He wants to be loved. But he does not know how to ask for it. With each encounter, he deposits a silent hope. Perhaps now she will see who I am. Perhaps now she will accept me without me having to pretend. But how could it happen if he does not show himself? The mask he wears to protect himself is the same one that prevents him from being recognized. And so, the cycle repeats. Conquest, pleasure, silence, emptiness. The feeling is that something has been lost, but he cannot name what it is, especially because he has never allowed himself to feel it fully. This cycle also serves as anesthesia. It is easier to get lost in the game of seduction than to face one's own reflection. It is more comfortable to believe that it is just fun than to admit there is an internal hole that no conquest fills. But every escape has a cost. The price is disconnection, the inability to form real bonds, and the gradual emptying of one's own identity. The man becomes a hostage to a role he can no longer sustain but does not know how to leave. At its core, this is the tragedy of the male theater. It does not only deceive others, it deceives the man himself. He believes he is living intensely, when in reality, he's only collecting superficial moments to fill the album of a rootless life. The soul remains hungry. The shadow remains in command. And he, without noticing, becomes a stranger to himself. Jung saw this as a prison of the psyche. The man is trapped between the persona, the social mask he shows the world, and the shadow, the rejected part of himself. Until he has the courage to leave the stage and face what exists behind the curtains, he will continue repeating the same play night after night with different bodies, but the same emptiness at the end. Because the true male desire is not victory and conquest, nor momentary pleasure. It is the freedom to strip off the masks and be accepted as he is. At first, escape seems like a solution. Superficiality protects. Quick sex, easy conquest, absence of commitment. All of this gives the sensation that the man is in control. He believes he's avoiding the pain of involvement, rejection, and being fully seen. But this is the first illusion, because by fleeing from the other, he's actually fleeing from himself, and no one can hide from themselves forever. Jung said that everything we avoid facing within ourselves returns as destiny. And in the case of the man who uses sex as an escape, this return comes in the form of emptiness. An emptiness that is not physical, but existential. He does not feel only dissatisfied, he feels drained, as if each encounter leaves less of him behind. Because every time he gives himself without presence, he trades vital energy for a few seconds of emotional anesthesia. This escape has a price that is not immediately noticed. At first, pleasure masks the loss, but over time, the consequences begin to accumulate. Disconnection becomes the standard. True intimacy begins to frighten. He no longer knows how to differentiate who is by his side out of real desire and who is only playing a role complementary to his. The theater becomes so constant that he forgets what life outside the stage is like. The body feels before the mind admits. After certain nights, there comes that fatigue that is not physical, that feeling of weight in the chest, that silent apathy. It is not only wear, it is emotional contamination, because each unconscious intimate act is also an exchange of wounds. When he lies with someone who carries chaos, he does not come out unscathed. He carries a bit of that chaos with him, just as he leaves a bit of his own. Pleasure becomes a burden. The cruelest part is that he believes he is living the male dream. That collecting bodies is proof of value, but deep down, he is emptying himself. The connections that could heal are replaced by contacts that only deepen the wound. It is like drinking salt water to quench thirst. The more he drinks, the more dehydrated he becomes. And each new escape leaves him further from what he truly seeks: belonging, acceptance, genuine connection. This logic of escape feeds the shadow. And the shadow is not a passive companion. It is an aggressive driver. When in command, it does not guide with care. It repeats patterns, crashes into the same obstacles, chooses the same destructive paths. And he, unaware of this, confuses the shadow's impulse with his own desire. He thinks he is acting by choice, but he is actually just obeying the wound. The result is a divided man. On the outside, he appears confident, controlled, virile. Inside, he carries insecurity, fear, and loneliness. This discrepancy comes at a high cost: the loss of internal coherence. He no longer knows who he is without the masks he wears. He no longer knows if anyone would love him for who he is or only for what he can offer. And this thought is unbearable, which is why he runs back to escape. But no escape is infinite. At some point, life forces the man to face himself. It may be through an emotional collapse, a relationship that shatters him, or simply an uncomfortable silence after another perfect night that leaves nothing but emptiness. It is at that moment that consciousness whispers or screams the truth he has spent years trying to ignore. No matter how many bodies he conquers, none of them will fill the space that only he himself can occupy. Carl Jung, sex was never just a physical act. He saw intimacy as sacred territory and also dangerous. In touch, in the gaze, in the pause between one breath and another, something much greater than the flesh manifests: the psyche. Two bodies may meet, but it is in the invisible meeting between unconscious minds that the true story happens. And this encounter, although rarely perceived, is too deep not to leave marks. It is not just body touching body, it is shadow touching shadow. The shadow is everything the man hides from himself. The fear of not being enough, the anger he has repressed for years, the guilt he carries in silence, the traumas he believed he had overcome. The shadow does not ask for permission. It does not wait for the right moment. It infiltrates the gesture, the rhythm, the way he kisses or avoids eye contact. It is there, in these gaps, that intimacy reveals more about him than any word. Jung understood that behind every physical arousal, there is a dialogue between wounds and unconscious desires. Often, what a man seeks in a woman is not just pleasure, but the projection of his own anima, the unconscious feminine side that lives within him. If this anima is wounded, hidden, or rejected, the encounter becomes a painful mirror. The woman he touches also becomes the materialization of what he does not accept in himself. And that is why genuine intimacy is so frightening. Because when it is real, it strips away defenses. For a few moments, he ceases to be the controlled persona he shows to the world. The mask cracks. And what emerges behind it is not the alpha man he learned to perform, but the vulnerable boy who fears being seen. Many retreat at this moment. Others close themselves completely. Presence, when unfamiliar, can feel unbearable. This dynamic creates a cruel paradox. He seeks pleasure as a way to fill himself, but flees the depth that could truly heal him. He is trapped in an intermediate space, enough to feel stimulus, insufficient to feel connection. And as the unconscious does not disappear by being ignored, it continues to manifest. With each act, the shadow is present, repeating patterns, attracting the same types of relationships, leading him to the same emotional dead ends. Jung said that the most important encounters of our lives were already arranged by the souls, even before the bodies met. But what happens when these souls arrive wounded? When, instead of offering healing, they offer mirrors reflecting unresolved pain. In this case, the intimate act ceases to be liberation and becomes imprisonment. It contaminates, drains, wears down. Because what is exchanged is not only pleasure, but also emotional scars. It is at this point that many men begin to ask themselves, why do I feel empty afterward? Or, why, even having pleasure, does it feel like I lost something? The answer, for Jung, is clear. Every time you unite with someone in the body, you also open yourself in the soul. And if that person is not whole, you share not only energy, but also chaos. The body records everything, and this record is not only physical, but psychological and spiritual. Understanding this is the first step toward lucidity. It is not enough to know how to act. You must know how to feel. It is not enough to be present in the body. You must be present in consciousness. Because intimacy is a mirror. And when this mirror is placed before you, you have only two choices. Continue fleeing from your own image or finally face what it reveals. Most men have been trained to see sex as conquest. From an early age, explicit and subtle messages reinforce that getting many is a sign of value, that collecting bodies is synonymous with male success. But no one taught that each intimate encounter is more than a physical act. It is a fusion of invisible worlds. Each person carries stories, traumas, memories, and energies that do not disappear when crossing the bedroom door. And when two people unite without awareness of this, what occurs is not only pleasure, it is an exchange of wounds. When a man lies with a woman who carries internal chaos, that chaos does not stay outside the bed. It comes in with him. And likewise, she absorbs his fragmented chaos. This is not superstition or cheap mysticism. It is the psychological reality Jung pointed out. Every intimate contact is also a contact of unconscious minds. It is one shadow dialoguing with another shadow, even if both are smiling and having fun on the surface. This absence of presence turns the act into something dangerous, because instead of being a space for healing and connection, it becomes a field of emotional drainage. The body may feel pleasure, but the soul feels weight, and this weight accumulates. It is no coincidence that many men report inexplicable fatigue, an apathy that comes after orgasm, as if something had been taken from them. That something is vital energy, wasted in an unconscious exchange. Jung said that what you do not face in yourself, you will find in the other as destiny. When intimacy is unconscious, this destiny repeats with different names, but the same pains. It is the man who always attracts the same type of relationship, who lives the same pattern of frustration, who returns to the same cycle of momentary pleasure followed by emptiness. He thinks he is living different experiences, but he is only performing the same play with different actresses. And the problem is not with women, nor physical attraction. The problem is the internal state in which the man enters the encounter. If he arrives needy, seeking validation, fleeing from himself, he is not surrendering. He is negotiating temporary anesthesia. Sex, in this context, ceases to be union and becomes a bargain. I give you my body, and in return, you give me a few minutes of relief. But like all emotional bargains, the effect passes quickly, and the cost is high. The cruelest part is that this emotional contamination is silent. No one notices it in the moment. It is the next day, the next week, or the repetition of the same mistakes that the signs appear. He begins to feel more confused about who he is, less connected with his essence, farther from his own peace. Unconscious intimacy not only empties, it fragments. It removes small parts of him until one day he realizes he no longer recognizes himself. And the more this pattern repeats, the harder it becomes to create a true bond. Because unconscious intimacy creates a kind of emotional scar that leaves him suspicious, skeptical, incapable of fully opening up. He no longer knows how to be truly present, because he has gotten used to using the physical act as a shield against vulnerability. But this shield is also a prison. It protects from the pain of being seen, but prevents the healing of being felt. In the end, the danger of unconscious intimacy is not only the loss of energy, but the loss of oneself. A man can spend years living in such relationships, believing he is enjoying life, without realizing that he is moving further and further from what he truly desires. Because beneath all the layers, the true desire is not to accumulate experiences, it is to find one that is whole. And this is only possible when he himself decides to be whole. There comes a moment when repetition tires. Pleasure ceases to be novel, conquest loses its shine, and emptiness becomes impossible to ignore. It is at this point that the man begins to realize he is not only physically tired, but spiritually exhausted. He no longer desires one more experience. He desires something he has never been able to name, but has always felt. The true male desire begins to reveal itself. It is not sex, it is reunion. Reunion with oneself. With the part he hid to protect himself, but that has always waited to be rescued. This sensitive, intuitive, empathetic part, the internal feminine side that Jung called anima, was suppressed by social pressure, ridicule, the need to always appear strong, but it remains there, asking to be recognized. And until he makes peace with it, he will continue seeking outside what he can only find within. Reunion requires courage, because to truly reconnect, the man must face his shadows, not to destroy them, but to integrate them. He must look at the fear of not being loved and realize that this fear does not define his value. He must accept that vulnerability is not weakness, but the only path to authenticity. Easy to say, hard to do. But it is in this silent work that true strength is born. This change also transforms the way he relates to sex. When a man is whole, intimacy ceases to be escape and becomes celebration. It is no longer a way to prove anything, but a space to share what he already has in abundance within himself. He does not touch to impress, but to connect. He does not seek the other person's approval, because he has already fully approved himself. And it is this silent security that makes surrender profound. Reunion also redefines the criteria of choice. The man who chooses himself first does not give himself to anybody. He protects his energy as one protects a temple. Not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. He understands that not every physical connection is worth the emotional cost. And for the act to be sacred, presence must be mutual. This does not mean expecting perfection. It means seeking truth. From this point, intimacy ceases to be a field for exchanging wounds and becomes an altar for healing. Every touch is conscious. Every gaze is permission. Every gesture carries intention. Sex becomes a language to express what words cannot reach. And when this happens, pleasure not only satisfies, it expands. The sensation is not of loss, but of growth. But perhaps most importantly, this reunion does not depend on another person. It begins in silence, the moment the man decides to stop abandoning himself. It is a daily commitment, not to a partner, but to himself, to his truths, his limitations, his desires. It is this self-honor that frees him from the cycle of escape and places him on the path of presence. And then, finally, he discovers the true male desire has never been another person's body. It has always been his own soul, asking to come home. When this return occurs, intimacy ceases to be a desperate search for wholeness and becomes the natural expression of one who is already whole. In this state, the man does not get lost in the other. He finds himself even more within himself. If this video awakened something in you, if at any moment you recognized yourself in the words, the wounds, or the silence I described here, then do not let this awareness be lost. Subscribe to the channel now, because here we do not speak to men who want to remain asleep, but to those who have the courage to look in the mirror without masks. Every new video is another piece in this process of reunion, another opportunity for you to choose yourself first. So click the button, turn on the bell, and let us continue this journey together. Because your transformation begins when you decide to stay awake. These two videos in front of you are not here by chance. And what if everything you believe about yourself is only a reflection of someone else's gaze? Click now on one of the videos next to you and begin to break this mirror. You will have to risk the click. So, which one will you choose?